Yusuf, good to see you. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for having me.
Would love to hear if you could, before you talk about your major announcement, what's coming down the line with Indigenous. If you could give people a little bit of background on yourself and your company, that would be a great way to start.
Yeah, no, appreciate it. Thanks for having me. Yusuf Henriques, founder and CEO of IndyGeneUS Bio. We're a biotech company looking to drive AI native drug discovery by building the world's most representative genomic data set in the world, including women in the African diaspora. Uh, we have been excited in working with HITLABs over the last few months in validating, doing some papers around, what we believe to be one of the leading um, bioeconomy that will lead the future, genomics and AI. Currently, right now, less than 1% of the entire world has had their whole genome sequenced. And in the next 3 to 4 years, we're excited to see the price come down, but also the fact that sequencing will be the major driver in looking at health outcomes within all community and bringing better medications to market that will service not one subpopulation but all.
It's wonderful and so badly needed. Everyone that we talk to, from life sciences development, from any kind of device or molecule, biotech, gene, cell therapy, you name it, they're all talking about this. So really appreciate the hard work that you're doing on this, Yusuf. And as you all know, there's a major announcement that Yusuf has. Maybe you could dive into that a little bit, Yusuf, about what your company's doing and who's joining your company now.
Yeah, no, look, we've been diligent. I think a lot of the work done earlier this year has been able to create the validation and evidence around what we're doing. As you mentioned, there's been a lot of articles that specifically speaks to this. And so we're excited to announce that as of a few days ago, we have now brought Dr. George Church, that is at Harvard University, the Wise Institute, has agreed to join our board because not only does he believe that sequencing costs should come down, as he's been doing over the last 20 years, he now believes that cell and gene therapy should be lower costs for individuals that need it the most within low income communities. So, yeah, we're excited to bring Dr. Church on board, being our scientific advisory board member. Along with others that will now really start thinking about how we frame indigenous bio as a company so that we could, meet the needs of so many communities, including myself, that are suffering from rare disease and some cell and gene therapy that'll be able to help eradicate some of the health disparities within communities that are underrepresented.
Yusuf, congratulations. I mean, I'm so happy for you and for the whole team at Indigenous. It's such a major announcement. And for those of you that are more on the health tech scene and less on the bioinformatics or on the gene therapy scene, then please just Google George Church. Very easy name to find online, unlike some other names like myself or whatnot. You can easily spell that name. It's literally spelled as it sounds on both names. And just look at the person that we're talking about here. Yusuf, again, congratulations. One of the most serious, impactful, and relevant scientists in the work of gene expression and gene research, and certainly gene drug development in the last 50 years. So, a really, really major congratulations to you, Yusuf.
Thank you. Thank you.
There's another big piece of news as well that some of the community may not have heard about, which is the coverage of the New York Times article in this area. If you could talk a little bit about the New York Times article, and a little bit about what Indigenous and how its work is affecting what they talk about in the New York Times article.
Yeah, no, look, you want to say stars are aligning. I mean, spending time with George Church, as you mentioned, getting a walkthrough of what he's working on there at the Wise Institute, yeah, inspired me as well to, think more innovative, right? Being around him for a day or two, that could spark a lot of innovation. And so the New York Times article came out timely because it's what Indigenous has been kind of saying over the last couple of years. And then really earlier this year, we were able to do the HITLAB evidence report with HITLAB to kind of really flesh that out. Is that, again, great science is being done, but there has been a subpopulation that's really driving a lot of the medicines, right? So that 88%, the missing 88% that we did really spoke to this New York Times, where we're now seeing the outcomes of that, right? So what the New York Times highlighted was the fact that a lot of the genetic testing that are being done are representative of what's being used, which is European descent data. And so currently, the New York Times article really kind of flushed out the polygenic risk score, which is one of the earliest innovation that's been coming out along with pharmacogenomics. But it's what Indigenous has been saying. How can we be getting the precision medicine and personalized medicine if we know the numbers are skewed the way they are? And so I think all the New York Times article did was validate what HITLAB has already validated, and what Indigenous built the company solely on, is that we need better representation of the GWAS research that's being done, because this is the end result that we're going to have all of these novel cell and gene therapy, whether on the cell side or the gene side, that are gonna be a little bit skewed to European descent, and that's not truly going to be representative of just what the U.S. or the globe is. So again, a little bit disappointed with the fact that we are here, but there lies the opportunity of what Indigenous is building, because we're now seeing the evidence not just on the research side, but downstream, when we're seeing that these genetic testing that's being utilized today, not 20 years ago, not 30 years ago, but today, has this disproportionate amount of European descent data that's driving cell and gene therapy, and that should be a concern for everyone going forward as we move into personalized and precision medicine.
Yeah, talk a little bit more about that as well. Let's double click on that personalized and precision medicine component of what you're building. Again, just the headline here, guys, is not just the coverage in the New York Times article about what they're doing, but also the George Church addition to the team. I think it's important just to understand the novelty and the relevance of what you're developing, particularly in light of the FDA's stance on diversity of genetic sets for drug development, disease prediction. Over the last year, they've come down pretty strong in saying that, yeah, if you want to have something approved, it's going to have a diverse set of clinical data in each phase, which includes a lot of the use of, particularly if folks are trying to do virtual or simulated trials, they have to have that data. And you've got now the largest data set in the world for the African genome. So talk a little bit about how this, like you said, all of these converging forces are coming together and how that's impacting what you guys are doing around disease prediction and drug development.
Yeah, no, look, being a former FDA guy, policies are important, right? And so, not only are we seeing this as good science and the science is there, now we're seeing that the policy, slow over the last couple of years since, when this originally started a few years ago of looking at phase 1, 2, 3 trials. But we're starting to see bipartisan support of that. This is just good science, because it's not that Indigenous is trying to create a African genome repository that's only going to benefit the African diaspora. It's already shown statistically like 40 to 50% genetic variability increase when you sequence more individual from a representative genome pool. And so that's women from all backgrounds, Black, white, Chinese, and then, of course, the African diaspora, which has been historically known to have higher genetic variability. So, again, we're excited also on that regulatory tailwind that we're starting to see bipartisan support on what's just been good science. This is not diversity thing. This is not a black and white thing. This is just saying, hey, we have this amount of people in the world. We need to do precision and personalized medicine. However, we don't have a data set today that represents that. And so we're also excited, not only with having George Church help us lead some of the initiatives that we're going to be doing in this space, but also that we're building a repository that will be representative. And so we've spent a lot of time building relationships on the continent, also here in the US, to have access to over, 1 million African descent genome whole blood sample ready for sequencing. And so, we're in the process of working with HITLAB in order to start driving, investor interest so that we could definitely look at the opportunities on how to scale fast and have this data readily available for academic researchers, startup companies are like ourselves, so that we could drive better drug cell and gene therapy for the future.
That's exactly where this is going. And I think the other thing that people need to know about and hear about directly from you is part of what we did in our validation around the data governance and the ethical use of AI. Talk more about how Indigenous is driving that with your business model and with the team that you're assembling. Obviously, having George Church as a part of that team is another piece of evidence validating that you do have one of the highest ethical data governance structures out there for this kind of work with gene data. If you could go into some detail for our audience here.
Yeah, no, look, as a former FDA guy, my colleagues and peers are also keeping a close eye on this. So my time at FDA spent a lot of time around making sure that we're collecting the samples ethically, and of course, making sure that the data governance is there. Of course, as you know, large data set like this will require partners. So we've been very diligent in working with our tech team and partners, which is Oracle, so that we could have the infrastructure and the GPUs and the compute power in order to really, one, store this data, sequence the data, but also protect the data, which is also going to be a critical component for some of the underrepresented population that is going to ask some of the tough questions. So what we've done is we've built out a tech model working with Oracle. We've built out a clinical genomic insight engine. We've written a patent on that particular technology that we filed last November, which includes being able to encompass the safety and the privacy that's required. Our CTO, Eric Williams, used to work for Johnson and Johnson and Tata Consulting, has spent his diligence and time over the last year creating a clinical genomic insight engine technology platform that we know will be robust as we scale to take on large terabytes of data and be able to withstand from an interoperability standpoint, be interoperable with other data systems that's already out there, but underrepresented with the data set that we're looking to do. So, over the last 6 months, we've spent a lot of time working with tech team. So we make sure that we have a data set that we can ingest with clinical data along with your genomic data so that we could come up with the best drivers of how to personalize medicine for each individual on our platform. And so in October of this year, we're looking to have the first MVP, which contract was signed a few months ago, where we have an MVP for a trusted research environment for South Africa, where we're helping them curate about 7 countries consortium where they have about 150,000 of the HIV, TB, malaria, PEPFAR samples that requires a trusted research environment that's protected in order to do data query and drive medicines that could help HIV, TB, and malaria development, drug vaccine, and gene therapy in the future.
That's incredible. And congratulations on that agreement as well, Yusuf. You guys have a lot of good stuff going on, and we're really excited to be teamed up with you to help in the overall validation and acceleration of your diffusion into the ecosystem. We've got a few minutes left here. One last question, which is, we've got a lot of startups, a lot of investors, a lot of healthcare buyers listening to this program today, hundreds around the world, thousands, and over the next month we'll hear this. If you could talk about some of the lessons learned that you've come together. Again, you're not new to this game. You've got a storied career, not only in the military, but with the FDA. And now you're bringing it all to bear to help not just the world, but also your daughters. If you could talk a little bit about the lessons you've learned in building Indigenous and in building this extraordinarily ethical AI governance within Indigenous as well, and what you'd like to pass on to some of the investors, buyers, and builders at HitLab and in the community around the world.
Yeah, no, look, great question. One, I think, look, listen, it's a unique opportunity, right? We see everything that's going on within the world, policies are being changed. And so, I'm excited and the opportunities that's out there to bring innovation to the forefront, which I think is also where I think the breakthrough you'll see from individual groups that are looking to challenge some of the health disparities and the rare disease that are affecting millions of people. For me, again, not only am I a founder, but I'm also a dad of twin girls that's suffering from a rare genetic condition called retinitis pigmentosa, and they're losing their vision. And so this is important for me to, one, have a data set that represents, the globe, but also two, making sure that the privacy and security is also included. But it's tough. You could drive the market scraping data that's already out there, but if you already know that that data set does not represent the population that you're trying to drive cell and gene therapy, that's already a non-starter for us. And so we've taken the time, like I said, working with HITLAB to make sure that we had the evidence and the validation studies to move forward, but then also making sure that we're building this with the trust of the community that we're looking to engage. So knowing some of the history that has happened over the century, we wanted to make sure that we're getting early customer engagement, which we've done over the last couple of years, building buy-in with communities, especially rare disease, sickle cell, diabetic retinopathy, and some of those areas that have seen a large uptick in prevalence. And so, what we've been doing is in community engagement, right? Boots on the ground, education, training, health literacy. Those are all things, because these are still emerging technology, genomics, AI, machine learning, blockchain. These are all things that are still fairly new. And so we see that the importance of making sure that we don't rush to having a product on the market before we've truly understood some of the complication or why this has not been done at scale before. Because remember, this is an area pharmaceutical companies are still struggling with billions of dollars. And so Indigenous has been very meticulous about getting that buy-in and building the trust in the community, that we want to make sure that this then is rapidly scaled once we've built that foundation. And so truly been a delight to work with Hit Labs, of thinking about all the things that could come up and will come up in the future. And so as we start to move into our infrastructure raise around capital, we're now starting to build that engine that we're going to start being able to show the data and the results that we know will come from having a diverse and representative genome data set that could end up driving medicine for a globe.
That's great. Yusuf, again, thank you so much for all the good work you're doing, not just for your daughters and for the country, but for everyone around the world. And looking forward to seeing you back on the program again soon. Take care.
Appreciate it. Thanks for your time.